Thanks for joining us on TVC Midday News. We begin in Kenya, where President Bola Tinubu has joined other African Union leaders and heads of regional economic community at the fifth Media Coordination Meeting of the AU. The president arrived in Nairobi on Saturday to participate in this meeting, where he will present a report on the status of regional integration in ECOWAS, highlight actions carried out during the period under review by ECOWAS institutions, member states, the private sector, and other stakeholders to deepen integration through trade, free movement of persons, investment, promotion, infrastructure development, peace, security, and stability. This fifth media coordination meeting, which is convened under the AU's theme for 2023, is tagged Acceleration of African Continental Free Trade Area Implementation, and it is made up of the Bureau of the AU Assembly, comprising the heads of states and government from Comoros, Botswana, Burundi, and Senegal, as well as the leaders of the 8 regional economic communities. In an earlier event on Saturday, delivered on behalf of the President Tinubu by the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the President called on African leaders to respect democracy, rule of law, and ensure political stability. TVC News State House correspondent Femi Akande joins me now from Nairobi, Kenya. Femi, thank you very much for joining us at this point. Looking at the agenda for this year's 5th Media Coordination Meeting, how important is this meeting to the development of the African continent?
Thank you, Theophilus. Well, this meeting, leaders of the African Union and regional economic communities are trying to ensure that all trade barriers within the continent is totally eliminated by pushing the implementation of the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement. And, they are saying that this would ensure that about 30 million people in Africa are lifted out of poverty with this trade agreement that has so far been signed by 54 countries in Africa. It's already at an implementation stage. It's stage by stage as we speak now. President Bola Tinubu, Nigeria's president, is briefing the African Union on the level of implementation so far on the regional basis, that is for the economic community of West African states. What leaders here are saying is that indeed African leaders should rise up and take responsibility, be accountable to its people, and ensure that problems facing the continent and facing the people of Africa get homegrown solution and opportunities from the continent, and stop looking elsewhere to other developed countries for handouts and other forms of intervention. And they are also pushing for a reform of the global financing agreement. The meeting that was held in France, Paris, where world leaders also converged to talk about a new financial order. Africa is making a case. They want to be treated as equals, just like other European and American countries who have more developed economies. What African leaders are saying is that indeed most of the problems in the world have not, in most cases, have little or nothing to do with Africa. If you look at global warming, that is the climate change, and all other issues of the world, including the COVID-19, a lot of these are not the making of Africa. But Africa bears the brunt. Africa is usually at the receiving end, and what they are saying is that, well, Africa should have access to the same kind of financing as other developed economies. And the heavy debt burden on African countries that has also hindered in their access to funds should also be made to go away or be considered by these international monetary agencies. They are asking for some kind of debt waivers and, of course, easing the whole debt financing burden on African countries. If all of these agendas are harmonized by African leaders and all adopted by them, they believe that indeed it will set Africa on the path of growth and development, and also lift its people out of poverty, which is the main agenda behind the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement.
Well, indeed, Femi, in all you have said, one thing caught my attention, and it's that of implementation. Like you said, they are at the implementation stage. Are there plans for the monitoring of African countries to ensure that implementation is top-notch?
Well, that is left to the leaders of the African countries, member countries of the African Union. They will have to demonstrate that political will. We have seen a lot of them talk about that desire to push for the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. It's left for them to go back to their country and ensure that from their own end, they also keep their end of the bargain. They also do everything within their means to ensure that trade barriers on the continent are removed and the region of Africa, in terms of trade, becomes borderless. This would help uh, boost entrepreneurship, grow small economies, both micro and the macro economy in the region. They will have to implement policies that will support businesses. They will have to empower the people, develop programs that would put more money in the pockets of the people, improve healthcare service delivery, infrastructure, and all other basic needs that would help improve the standard of living of Africans. So the ball is also largely in the court of member countries who would have to use their governments of their country as the vehicle for implementation.
Well, Femi, in your reports that we played earlier, you talked about the fact that the president had called on African leaders to respect democracy and the rule of law. Give us some more on that.
Well, that speech by President Bola Tinubu, his inaugural speech when he was appointed as the chairman of the Economic Commission of West African States, that is ECOWAS, has indeed been resounding among African leaders, and it seems like a lot of them are saying that indeed this is the kind of message they need at this time when it's becoming as if coup d'etats is becoming the order of the day on the continent. Just like I said in my report, since 2020, Nigeria, the continent has had six successful coups with three attempts, and there's so much political instability caused by this military takeover. What President Bola Tinubu is saying is that, well, military regimes bring nothing but poverty, poor health, and other sufferings on the people. He says he understands that democracy is difficult to manage, but it is the best form of government because it has been proven to fast track economic growth and development. He says all of these coup d'etats have set Africa back, especially West Africa, that is now becoming the hub for these military takeovers and the interregnums we are seeing lately. But what he's saying is that indeed ECOWAS as a regional body would have to stand firm in terms of not only sanctions, but even if it means putting boots on the ground to go to any country that where a military takeover has happened and removing that military regime and installing a democratically elected government. He said if that is what it takes, then African leaders using ECOWAS and the African Union must be ready to do that. It says all regional interests should be set aside all political interests should be set aside in the interest of enthroning democracy in Africa.
All right, TVC News senior correspondent Femi Akande, thank you so much for talking to us this morning.
Thank you.